Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to join. Gosh, we have a lot of people already. This is exciting. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us live. Those of you who join live, I know I have a really bad habit of signing up for webinars because the content always, seems and sounds amazing and like something I want to learn, but then the day gets away from me and it's so hard to join. So thank you for taking time out of your day to actually join. We are going to give it just another couple of seconds here, 10, 15 seconds. I like to start on time as possible because again, we all have other things to move on to today, but we have a lot to get through. So thank you again. And we also are going to be launching some polls. So want to certainly make you aware of that, make sure that you're ready to participate in those. And then the agenda for today, let's talk through that. We actually have 8 actionable notes on how to drive revenue throughout the entire funnel. We are going to talk about a list of the industry's best storytellers, the people who are telling the best story with data right now. So if you're looking to be a better data storyteller, I'm going to give you some shortcuts to that. Ways to get faster results from your team. Technology is a really great tool for this, but sometimes it's overwhelming. And so we want to help you with that feeling of overwhelm. And we also have a really incredible takeaway today. So for those of you who stick with us throughout the entire session, we have a playbook that we're going to give you that is a supplemental guide to this webinar. It goes into much more detail than what I'll even be able to get into today, but it's going to be there for you to use as a resource. So you can consume one page of that playbook at a time. You can cover a page per week. You can use it in your next team meeting to get your team on the same page, or as you're writing your marketing plans for 2022. So that's something that is coming after the webinar. But I do want to encourage you all. This is something that is really important with content and storytelling is you have to have content to fill all of your channels, whether it's social media or your website. So what I want to encourage you to do today with each other is to snap and share on LinkedIn. And I'm going to be giving away some prizes after the webinar for people who snap and share and just create the sense of community because we're all here to help each other. So as you find something that resonates with you today that we're talking about, or if a little light bulb goes off in your mind, snap a picture, take a screenshot, or if there's just some copy that you like that we talk about, take that copy and go put it on your LinkedIn page and tag RealLink in that and let us know how we're helping you level up today. And then I'll be picking a winner for that. So let's dig right in. One of the things that is so true is numbers don't lie. We hear this a lot, and I'm really guilty of saying this a lot too, but they absolutely can fib. And what I mean by that is that if you're not collectively looking at the whole set of data, then the numbers aren't telling you the whole story. And it could cause you to make marketing decisions that necessarily aren't the smartest marketing decisions, or maybe causes you to spend more money out of your advertising budget than you need to. So this is the premise of the entire session today. And what we want to accomplish is when we get the story right, when we look at all of the metrics and all of the data, it helps us create more efficient processes. So I could look at one number, but it might not be telling me that whole story. And so then I'm not going to create the most efficient process. When we have the right story and the data sets all working together, we can be more prescribed in our marketing decisions or in even what we're asking our teams to do. So instead of telling our teams, hey, we need more traffic this week, we can tell them exactly where we need more traffic from or where we need to convert better. We want to get approval for all of the things that we want, right? We are, as marketers, as leasing consultants, as regional managers, as supplier partners, we probably get told no quite a bit. And we're used to hearing the word no, but gosh, it sure is nice when we get those yeses. And so I know you all have had some tool or strategy or product that you've wanted to deploy that you feel so incredibly strong about, but then you were told no by the higher ups. So this data today and what we're teaching you to measure and how to pair metrics together, this will help you and lead you to more yeses in 2022. And a lot of that comes from proving the ROI, but ROI not just in how many leases did this tool or this strategy generate for me, but what did it do? What happened to our human capital that goes into that behind that? What happened to the money that we spent on this product or tool, or where were we able to spend in other areas because we saved? We create skills individually that are, I like to say, resume worthy, and not necessarily that any of us are going anywhere, but for your internal resume, because most of us in this industry are really competitive. We like to be top performers and we want to do a good job. And so if there is anything that you want to, a different role that you want to move into in your company, if you want to eventually get a promotion, if you're just looking for that recognition, these skills that we're going to teach you today are something that you can hone individually. And then that's something that you can put on what I call your internal portfolio or your internal resume to show your bosses and your higher ups what you're learning and that business acumen when it comes to sales, marketing, leasing, digital marketing, all of those things. And then we want to identify key areas to focus in on. So again, instead of being really broad, where should your focus go? Because it's very distracting in the market these days. So what I like to say is when it comes to measuring data, we have to pour the basement first. And this is something that I've personally been doing all year in 2021. We have to build a foundation first. And so the basement acts as a foundation of the home, right? It supports the rest of the home. And this is what everything else is built upon. It holds all of that. So it's also, though, for those of you who maybe live in the Midwest, a basement is a place where we sometimes have to retreat to for security and for safety. So I want you to also do this with your metrics and to essentially build that house, but you've got to pour the foundation first. And you maybe already have a foundation. Maybe it's been there for a really long time, but over time, foundations can get cracks in them. And so you've got to fill those in or you have to make those repairs. And this is a really good time of year to go through that exercise and to determine where are the cracks or where are the holes or where are things starting to leak in that is creating that overwhelm for you as far as your metrics go. So with your metrics, start with a foundation. And as we talk through the multifamily marketing funnel today, I want you to choose only 1 to 2 metrics at each phase of the funnel or at each phase of what we call the customer journey. And then as things get complicated and as you start layering on technology after technology, you'll have that home base to come back to or to retreat to when the numbers start causing overwhelm. And this doesn't mean that we don't want to get granular with our data and our numbers. It just means that this is our baseline and we can also rebuild that foundation and baseline at any time if we need to. So again, when you've got all of these different tools and you're trying to connect these things all together and using different software systems, this foundation is what's going to hold the rest of that house and keep it from collapsing. So I like to set the foundation today by saying, pour your basement first. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the multifamily marketing funnel. So at the very top of the funnel, let me go back. At the very top of the funnel, this is what we call the attract phase. And there are 3 phases to this funnel. And some of you maybe have heard me talk about this before, but we call this attract. And this is because this is where customers start their search. They typically open a Google search tab and they type in a very broad search term like apartments in downtown Cincinnati. I'll use that example since that's where I'm based. They don't know the name of your community yet or the name of your portfolio or your management company. They're just looking for general apartment options in a specified area or neighborhood. And this is the same way that most of us operate. For example, if we're planning a vacation, if we want to take off to Jamaica tomorrow, we probably don't know the name of a specific resort in Jamaica, but we're going to open our Google search tab and we're going to type in resorts in Jamaica. And we're going to start getting back websites like TripAdvisor or Travelocity. And those websites are going to show us a lot of different resorts in Jamaica. And from there, what we do is we start funneling through those results. So we start looking for our price range. We probably have a budget. We're looking at features. Is it oceanfront? That might be something that we really want. And then maybe what amenities they have. Do they have a kids program? If I'm traveling with my family, that's really important to me. This is the same way that prospects shop for apartments. Our job here as marketers, as leasing consultants, our job here is to simply get noticed and to show up on the radar. We just want to be an option in that list and to show up in those search results. We are not yet ready to start having a conversation with these people. We just want them to notice us. So that's why we call this part of the funnel attract. We want to attract those prospects and for them to get eyeballs on us, on our brand, and on our company, on our property. And then the middle of the funnel is called convince, because our job here as marketers is to convince those prospects that we have what they want. They are creating that short list of communities that fit their criteria. But before they even reach out to you or physically enter your leasing office, what they do is they enter your digital leasing office. So that's your website. These are your social media channels or pages. And they even then what they do is they go back to Google. And now they'll do another Google search, but they're going to type in the name of your property. That's a branded search. So they're going to Google you by name to learn more because you made the short list, but they still need further convincing to actually get to your website and to then reach out to your team so you can start interacting with them. So again, the job is to convince them and to have such compelling content within your site, within your advertising, within your social media pages, that you can convince them to eventually take a tour or rent from you. And then the last phase of the funnel is what we call nurture. And this is where once the move-in occurs, once they become a resident, it's our job to continue to nurture that relationship. And we want those residents to either want to stay and renew. Ultimately, that's the best. But at minimum, we want them to either be willing to refer others or to leave a raving review. But one of the things that happens often in our industry is we don't always compare apples to apples, and we can't measure everything with the same tool. So just like in life, there are many different ways to take measurements, and we have all of these different measuring tools that you see on the screen. You have measuring cups that are for liquids. You have measuring cups that are for solids. We have rulers and yardsticks and even levels that measure and make sure that something is straight. So whether it's your property management system, your CRM, or Google Analytics, or maybe even other dashboards, depending on the systems that you're using, you have to use the right tools at the right time. So for example, if you're only using your property management system and reports that you get out of that to measure your website productivity without pulling any Google Analytics perspective or reporting, you're going to have a really big gaping hole in the basement of that foundation. And in your assessment, and you're going to start making maybe the wrong decisions, or even worse, you're going to start wasting those precious marketing dollars, which there are never enough of those, on the wrong strategies. So today we're going to dig into what to measure and how to measure it at each phase of the funnel. So let's take the first phase. So this is the attract phase. So the tools that typically fall into this phase of the funnel are things that tend to drive traffic. So SEO, which is search engine optimization, that's optimizing your website so there's visibility within Google. Maybe paid ad campaigns like Google ads or ads that you're paying per click, PPC. ILSs, if you're on any of the ILS listing sites, those would fall at the top of the funnel, traffic generation, and even 360 videos. So when I talked about measuring apples to apples, this is a really common thing that I hear here at Relink because we are a video company as well. And some people think that the video product that we have is the same as a 360 video tour, but they're really not. So that's something, making sure that you are comparing apples to apples and not throwing different tools all in the same basket. That's also going to hurt these metrics and what you're trying to measure. So what we want to measure at this part of the funnel, there's a lot that you can measure, and it can get very overwhelming, especially if you are not a Google marketing expert, and most of you have other duties, so you probably aren't a Google expert, and Google is always changing the rules. But one of the things that you want to do, and what I want to encourage you to do if you don't know this number, is to figure out what your multifamily website conversion rate is. Most of you could probably tell me what your leasing team, what their conversion rate is. So out of all of the tours they take, how many of those turn into rentals? But do you know what that same conversion rate is for your website? So the average multifamily website converts only at about 2%. Now that number sounds really low compared to those closing ratios we usually see with leasing numbers, but this is very normal. So about 2%. And what that means is there are only about 2 out of every 100 people who visit your website who actually convert to a lead at all. This means that your team is not physically talking to these people and they don't even have an opportunity to do that or to engage with them until that person actually clicks to call or clicks online to submit a formal guest card that gets through to your team. So I want you, one, if you don't know today, I want you to go and look at your numbers or ask the person in your company or your website vendor or your digital marketing partners, how many people are visiting your website? And out of those people, how many actually clicked to call you or they filled out an online guest card? What number is that? What's that conversion rate? Set that baseline right now so that we just know what that is and you can benchmark it and only go up from here. So the goal is whatever that number is, let's say you're at the average 2%, we want that number to get better. Can you get that to 5% or 10%? But start tracking that conversion week over week and month over month to benchmark it. And then just work to capture more of that traffic that you're already getting. Because when you're not tracking this number, what happens is we are really bad about just spending more money on advertising and generating more traffic. But as you can see from this example, we have 98 people that are there, they just haven't converted. So we really don't need to go and get more people. We just need more of these 98 people to raise their hand and say they want to talk with us. Something else too at this phase. So paid ads like Google ads sit in this category, like I mentioned, but we really want to stop measuring impressions and start measuring clicks and click-through rates. Something that I hear, and this is really common, and if you're guilty of this, please don't feel bad because this is something that it takes a lot of practice and a lot of, again, Google and digital marketing know-how to understand this, but someone could tell you, oh my goodness, we're running Google ads for you and you got 10,000 impressions this month. And gosh, that number sounds really great. But bigger numbers aren't always better. And I don't really care how many impressions you get because that's just how many people saw your ad. That doesn't mean that they took an action with it at all. It doesn't mean they clicked on it, doesn't mean they got to your website. It's just basically they saw it while they were scrolling Google or scrolling on social media. And so I don't really care so much about that. That's really similar to saying, oh, my property is in a downtown location and we get a lot of foot traffic and 500 people walk by this property on any given day. Well, I don't really care if 100 people walk by or 500 people walk by. If they're not walking into your physical leasing office to take a tour, it doesn't matter how many of them are walking by. So I would rather 20 walk by and 10 of them actually walk in than 500 and you've only got 5 walk in. So we want to just make sure that you are measuring actual click-throughs, people who are clicking and taking a physical action versus just how many people saw your ad. So that's another common mistake. And those are metrics that are the most important to measure at this part of the funnel. You can measure a lot of different things, but we want to make sure we're focused on building that basement and that foundation. And we want the on-site teams to know what these numbers are. I know that if anyone's on today, I know some of you are on and you do work on site. This is something that I feel like is very powerful for you all to know because you can influence these numbers. And if these numbers are low or not where we need them to be, you are the eyes and ears of the property and you could absolutely feed really great prospect intel to whoever is managing your ads or working on your SEO. And that would be incredibly helpful for them. So I do want on-site teams to, I don't think they have to be experts on this by any means. They have so many other things to do, but they can certainly help level up the game here. So here's our measure up for us. One thing that you can do to make this better and to get better conversion rates with your, whether it's SEO or paid ads, is start incorporating video into these. So one of the things that Google is doing, and I'm going to show you this screen share here, you'll see this moving. Google will sometimes, they've started showing these thumbnail images next to search results. So you're seeing some little photos next to these search results here. And what's happening is this happens more on mobile right now, and we're all still trying to figure out the exact formula that gets Google to show these thumbnails. But when a listing has a thumbnail image, like what you're seeing here in this example, the click-through rate goes up as much as like 20 to 30%. It improves just by adding video. So the presence of that thumbnail, what it does is it makes a rich snippet. And I don't want to get too technical or go into this too much, but I do want you to walk away inspired to maybe go do your own research or Google some of these terms that I'm using that you're maybe not familiar with, because this is how we all get smarter and we learn. So if you don't know what a rich snippet is, go and Google that after the webinar today. But a rich snippet is just something that's got a little more information listed in a listing, and it's going to make the user want to click on that listing more than just a regular listing. So the snippets, though, have to closely match the content that the prospect was looking for. So for example, if you have a page on your website about pets or your pet policies or how pet friendly you are, the more that you have video and images and what we call rich media on that page, the more likely those snippets are going to show up in Google. And then that's going to help your click-through rate. People are going to be more likely to click on that than to click on your competitors' listings that are very plain or very vanilla. If you have a floor plans page, imagine if you had all of these rich media, video, photos on there about your individual floor plans, not about your A style floor plan, but about unit 601. So this is really important to add. And what I want to show you here is an example of rich snippets to help you understand this a little bit better. So the example on the left is a normal snippet. And as you can see, it's just very plain text and plain copy. And then the one on the right has a little more information. So one of the things that you'll want to know is there are typically about 8 different kinds of rich snippets. You can display ratings and reviews. You can display recipes, music, product markup, which that's mostly used in retail, but could work for specific floor plans, like I just mentioned, apartment 601, or units that you're maybe trying to move. An organizational information snippet, top stories, which is mostly used for news articles, video, and events. So the easiest ones out of these types of rich snippets for our industry are ratings. And then guess what? Video. Those are going to be the easiest ones for you to incorporate into any of your strategy to help you make these numbers that we're trying to measure better. And on the heels of that with video. So video is, people spend 2 times, I should say that again, 2 times, they spend 2 times more time, I'll get that out here in a minute, on your website when you have Google. It's double the time without that. And I don't mean overly produced video. They're not necessarily looking for that overproduced video, but what they simply want is to consume video content that is the best match that will help them at each particular stage of their apartment search. So ask your website administrator or again, your digital marketing partners about rich snippets and which video content you should be producing next based on how your website is currently performing. So go back to that. What do your conversion numbers look like? What's your website conversion rate? What is your click-through rate if you're running Google Ads? And ask that question. Should we be incorporating more rich snippets? And if so, where are the opportunities there to improve that? And again, if you're on the webinar today and you work on site, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by any of this information that I'm giving you. I want you to be able to ask better questions of those people who are helping to manage these things in your organization and to your marketing directors. And the other thing too with video is Google tends to prioritize search results based on video. So SEO results show this, that your website will show up better, more often, and higher up in search results organically, meaning that you don't have to pay for that. It's not an ad, it's organic if you have video. So this is why we really want you to focus on video. No matter the video tool that you might be using, it's just really important that you get started and are using some form of video to help with those organic rankings. And that also will save you on your ad budget. So we have a quick poll. Let's launch our poll. Ashley's going to launch the poll for us today. Have you started incorporating more video into your top of funnel marketing efforts? So remember, we're talking about that very top of the funnel, the attract phase. So either are you doing this and you're seeing strong results? Are you maybe just, you're lost and you just don't know where to start with your video strategy? you want to, but maybe you don't feel like you have the right tools or resources to make this happen, or maybe it's a budget issue. You feel like you just don't have the budget to make it happen. Or maybe you've dabbled in this a little, but not routinely, and it needs to become more routine into 2022. So let's see what the results of the poll are here. See who is incorporating more video at the top of the funnel. We'll give it another second or two.
So the common answer was sometimes, but not routinely.
Okay, good to know. That is better than nothing. That's great. I would like for you guys to, it's good to know that you've dabbled in that. That's certainly going to help your website conversion rates, but we just have to get in the habit of doing it better. And so something I like to say that we learned during the pandemic is we all really had to start relying on video to keep our operations running. But now we know better. And so we kind of, we didn't necessarily perfect it last year, but we all learned how to do it, and we learned how to get out of our comfort zones. And so now this next year is going to be the time that we really start to strategize strongly around that and build a stronger foundation and strategy for video. So something else that we can do to help these numbers is we discuss the client journey and how they create their shortlist, and their natural workflow is to go back to Google and complete that branded search where they're going to type in the name of your property by name into the Google search bar. And what they're really looking for there is they're looking to learn more information that convinces them, is it really worth making the drive to the property? Is it really worth me going and checking this place out? And this is no different than what all of us do when we're online shopping, which a lot of us are probably doing that this time of year. But if we read Amazon reviews for $5 purchases, our customers are absolutely reading our apartment reviews. But if you make the short list, let's say someone saw your Google ad, they liked what they saw on your ad, clicked through your website, but now they're going back out to Google and they're looking for more information. So you made their short list. Yay, that's what we wanted to happen. But then if you don't have a 4-star plus review, you're coming off of that short list and you're not going to get another opportunity to engage with that customer. They're just gone. So you burned up essentially ad money, driving them to your website and getting them interested, but then your reviews now sent them away, and you have to spend more money now all over again to capture another potential prospect. And so this vicious cycle is going to continue. And there have been plenty of times that I know some of our industry supplier partners who work in the digital marketing space and who run a lot of Google ads and manage websites, that they recommend this as well. But I really don't recommend that you spend more money on ads until you fix your ratings and reviews, because those ratings and reviews, you're going to capture the customer at the very beginning of the funnel, but you're going to lose them and they're not going to convert, and your conversion rate is just going to be out of control. So look at your ratings and reviews. And a lot of times you do have a ratings and reviews problem. Maybe it's a property that recently transitioned or that you took over. This happens a lot, or it's going through a renovation or a rehab. And so a lot of times it's not your fault, but we just have to fix that before we start driving more traffic, spending ad dollars. So what to measure now mid-funnel? So we're trying to convince them, but we've gotten them into our funnel. And so now we are on the short list, but we have to keep their attention in a very noisy marketplace. So what we want to do is we really ultimately here want to measure tours scheduled. Out of all of those people, how many physically scheduled a tour? And that could be a virtual tour, that could be a self-guided tour, that could be a traditional tour. So any kind of a tour, but that's ultimately, we want to get them in front of the leasing teams, because leasing teams are fabulous. And we know that once we can get a prospect in front of our team, we have a much more higher likelihood of getting them to close. And then signed leases. So again, there are so many metrics that we can measure here at each stage of the funnel, but these are the basics that we want to start with that foundation. So are your prospects converting at this phase of the funnel? Of course, we want to know if they're converting from all of the things that you have in place, but overall, are they converting? How long or how many steps does it take them to convert into a tour or a rental? And I want you to be really careful to not measure conversion tools with the same mindset or measuring tools that you're using to measure traffic generation. So here's a really common mistake that I hear. People will say to me, I'm not getting very many leads from my chatbot. They have a chatbot on their website. Well, a chatbot is not a lead generation tool. So that is very different. It is a conversion tool. A chatbot is something that people start talking to once they hit your website. So to start to be measuring that tool by number of leads you get from it, well, that lead was already a lead by the time it came into your website. But I do hear this fairly often. And again, don't feel bad if you're one who's doing this. We just, once we know better, we do better. So conversion tools don't drive more traffic, they're just converting it. And don't think that maybe in that scenario that you need to cancel your chatbot and go get a new tool or go buy more advertising, but look at ways to make that tool convert better. So for example, how many conversations are being had with your chatbot? How many prospects every single month are initiating a chat and asking a question of that bot? And you can pose this question to whatever tools you might have in place here at the middle of the funnel. These are not just your chat bots, but your email marketing. You might have website pop-ups. You have maps apps, all kinds of things here. But you can pose the question the same way. Just don't ask, how many leads is this generating for me? Because that's not the job of that tool. Look at how many steps does it take someone to try to schedule a tour with your property? How many clicks is that? We want that to be as few clicks as possible. We want it to be really easy for them to connect with you. How many of your website visitors are having conversations with those tools? What is the cost per conversation? That's a really unique metric that you can measure here too. So out of all of those people having a conversation with your chatbot, whether you like bots or not, what is that costing you? So what's the cost of the tool? And then how many conversations did that tool have with a prospect that month or even a resident? And what's that cost compared to your human capital cost? So if a chatbot is $99 per month, how much did that cost per conversation? And then if you had a live human answering all of those questions that came in, and what is that person's salary rate? What does that comparison look like? The technology is normally the cheaper option. And if it's built correctly, it can still give a really wonderful experience to those prospects. What is the experience like on your competitors' websites? I would always be shopping your competitor websites as well. One of the ways to capture traffic really quickly here. So we talked about the average conversion rate of a website is 2%. So if you want to get that percentage up to 5% or even 10%, one of the easiest and quickest ways to do that is with a website pop-up, and use these throughout your website. And now I do not mean the annoying pop-ups that you can't click out on, you can't see the X, you just can't get it to go away, or it keeps coming back. I mean using these very strategically and in a very smart way. So the one you're seeing here, this is an example from our friends at 30 Lines. They do a wonderful job with website pop-ups. And what they have here is, you'll notice this pop-up is a little different than pop-ups that you might see on your website or on some of your competitor websites, because it's not offering a special or a concession. It's not telling them to sign up right now. What it's doing is it's giving prospects a really great resource at a time when they really probably need it. So when someone's shopping around for apartments, that's information overload. They are talking to multiple properties. It can get really confusing. And so what they're going to do here in this example is they're going to give them a list of, hey, here are 10 questions that you should ask of any apartment community that you're touring. That would be so helpful for prospects. And so, yes, they're likely to opt in and to download this list of questions. I want to know what those questions are that I should be asking. If I'm going on vacation to Jamaica, what are the questions I should be asking, or what should I be looking for in these resorts that I want to book? It's the same concept. So what you can do with pop-ups too is, you really don't want them to pop up the minute someone hits your website. That's going to hurt your conversion rate, because they're going to click out. They haven't had a chance to really browse your site yet. And so they need a minute to kind of comb through your site, consume the data, and then you want that pop-up to be timed. And yes, you can time these, but you want it to be timed at exactly the right time, then when they're really ready for that next messaging. And you can have all different kinds of pop-ups. So we talked about how video can help your time on site. People will spend more time on site. But what you can also do is you can incorporate video into pop-ups. So if you have a pop-up on your floor plans page where you're talking specifically about your 1-bedroom apartments, that's a great place to have a video and your team introducing specifically the features of your 1-bedroom apartments and touring through those or showcasing those. And that's content that would be really relevant to what that prospect is looking for right there in that very given moment. If you have that pet page, you can have a pop-up that talks about, hey, download the video to see the top 5 things that pets love about our community. They're going to get that video in their inbox. So that's a great video, is a great way to level up. And not every website has an offer for like personalized video tours. So if you, again, on your floor plans page, I would recommend that you all add a video or add a pop-up that says, hey, request a personalized video tour of this apartment. And then they opt into that. So then what your team is doing is that person's on your website, but again, we know 98% of these people walk away. So if you have a little call to action on your pop-up that says request a personalized video tour, what happens is they're going to opt in and give their name and email address, and that's going to come through to your teams. And then your team creates a video of that unit and sends it to that prospect. So you got that prospect to opt in because you gave something that was of high value to them right at that moment when they were looking for that information specifically about a unit that they were interested in. The other thing that you can do here is you can A/B test your pop-ups. So that means you should have different kinds of pop-ups. You should play around with the timing of these. Again, don't just put these on the homepage of your website. And goodness, don't just put a marketing message on there without an opportunity to opt in. We want to collect the email address so you all can follow up and so that you can run some ads and remarket to those people and stay top of mind. But we'll be sharing more on these and more ideas for website pop-ups in our tools that will come after the webinar. One thing that we can do too, I love this, is personalized follow-up. That's what also is going to keep these people engaged with us when they're in this middle part of the funnel and they're comparing us to all of the competitors out there in the marketplace. But one thing I want to put out there to you today is personalization is not incorporating the prospect's name into the conversation. This was, 1998 when I started in the business. Yes, we want to use the prospect's name, but you cannot count that towards personalization. Today, personalization is taking time to actually be personal, and technology helps us scale this. It makes it scalable so that we can reuse that content and be personalized at the same time. So I want to share with you a really fun follow-up video. I want to show you what personalized follow-up looks like. Let's take a look.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Remember me? Why haven't you applied yet? You loved it here. You must have forgotten how great our kitchens look. Let me remind you. You have to remember our chef-inspired kitchen. Look at your quartz countertops, gas stove with cooktop griddle that makes the best pancakes, and you even have a gold light pendant right above your island. This is what you fell in love with.
How fun is that? And he talks about, he's not just showcasing that unit, but he's talking about the place to make pancakes. It's so personal and he is showing his face. He's being personal in that. So I love that for follow-up. And what I would encourage you to do with any tools that you're using to specialize follow-up or these conversion tools is not just looking at those numbers month over month, but actually setting KPIs and benchmarks. So at this phase of the funnel, we want to look at tours scheduled, tours taken, leases signed, but for all of these other metrics, to keep them from being overwhelming, we have to have something to compare those to. So start looking at those tools that you're using. What are the numbers today? And let's start building on that. Now, at the bottom of the funnel, this is the nurture phase. So ratings and reviews scores certainly come into play here. And this is not just about responding, but it's how and in what format you respond in. We want to be using rich media. So rich media means video, audio files, and using that to respond to our ratings and reviews. Now, some ratings and reviews platforms, you can share a link. So you, again, could create a very personalized video response to a rating that someone leaves for you, whether it's good or bad. You can create that video and share a link. If you can't share a link there, what you can do is leave that and leave the comment or leave the feedback response to the review. But you could personally send a video response to them, again, either thanking them for their feedback or just showing them more empathy to whatever those concerns were. Turn asking for reviews, turn that into a habit. We have to get into the habit of physically asking for the reviews at the right time. So when someone's had a great experience with us, after they just had a really great tour, after we just completed a service request for them in record time, let's just say, hey, would you mind leaving a review for us? And a lot of times people will do that for you, and that will bump up that response, because everything that happens here at the bottom of the funnel influences the top of the funnel and how much we have to spend there. But don't measure and ask for feedback with residents if you don't want to do something about it. We measure this. A lot of you are probably using surveys and trying to gauge resident sentiment, but we have to also be willing to do something about that and to take action on whatever feedback they're giving us. One thing that can be hard to measure is resident engagement. But if you have the right tools, it can help you keep a pulse on your customer base so you can anticipate and forecast more accurately than ever. So let me show you an example of that and what you can measure here. So instead of measuring, something that's really common in the industry is measuring the percent of work orders completed every week. We try to reduce, we want to have as high of a percentage of work orders completed. So if we got 100 work orders, we want 99.9% of those to be completed within the same day or the same week. We don't want residents waiting a long time for that service. But instead of trying to just work on that percentage completed, let's start working to just reduce the overall number of work orders. And we all know that our maintenance teams are stressed out and overworked and we're short-staffed. But one thing that you can do here, again, is incorporating video and technology to help you manage this. You've probably contemplated using video responses or maybe even having some explainer videos about your policies on property or for FAQs, and you can personalize those. But something that you can do is you can host town hall meetings on video. You can host virtual events, which a lot of you maybe did last year, and documenting those FAQs. But here's a way that you can actually reduce your work orders. Oh, let me go. There we go. So what you can do is use video to help residents understand how to fix things on their own. And I don't mean this in a way that takes service away, any element of service or high quality service away from residents. But what I mean is, look at this common example. And this really is how things happen on site still today. So at 9 a.m., a resident calls in a service request for a garbage disposal repair. Their garbage disposal isn't coming on. And then at 9:03 a.m., the leasing consultant has to take a tour. So they got the service request, but they didn't quite get to write it up yet because someone walked in to take that tour. So they take the tour and then they come back to their desk and they finally enter in the service request. So the maintenance team knows that there's something to actually be fixed. And then the maintenance team had a few other things to fix first. So they finally come to the office, get the service request. Now at 3:30, they're going to go and visit the resident. It only takes 5 minutes. They actually fix the garbage disposal. So only a 5-minute fix, but they went over to the unit, got that fixed. They come back to the office, and someone at the end of the day finally closes that service request out from the property management or CRM system. So it's actually about an 8-hour process. It was about 6 hours to the time that the resident submitted the request to the time that maintenance got over there and fixed it. And then it's 8 hours by the time we actually get it closed out in our property management systems. But if you had an explainer video that just showed residents that there's a little red reset button on the garbage disposal, that they could fix that themselves, that's not bad service, or that's not putting it back on the resident. But what that's doing is that's just helping the resident get to a resolution faster. And it's actually saving your maintenance team so much time. They're not coming to the office to get their work order. They're not walking over to that particular unit, conversing with the resident. It's completely eliminating that. And we're seeing where some work orders, some of the most common work orders, are being completely eliminated because properties are incorporating video into this. So this is what you can use to measure resident engagement, because you've got analytics and data behind it. So let's start with poll number 2, and we're almost wrapped up here. But what data points do you struggle to make the most sense of? Is it at the top of the funnel? Is that what's most confusing or overwhelming for you? Middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, all of the above, or none of the above? Maybe you are a metrics guru. We'll get those responses in quickly. And we'll look at those results.
Most common answer was middle of funnel.
That's so interesting. And I think that's because that's where we have the most tools. A lot of us that we're trying to layer on all of these different tools. So we'll keep talking about that subject, and we'll make sure that we share, again, some additional resources with you all afterwards to help you feel smarter mid-funnel. So let's talk about, again, numbers don't lie, but they can fib. So how do we tell the better story? I want to talk you through ordinary multifamily data points and how they can look good and strong, but if they're not put into context, they can inadvertently lead you to make the wrong or a poor decision. So data presented with no narrative is incredibly dangerous. Without a well-told story, your organization can quickly be led down the wrong path. And so let's simplify what you can measure here. Let me show you some common data points. So a 50% closing ratio. This is for leasing teams. So if a leasing team tells me that they have a 50% closing ratio, my initial reaction is, wow, amazing. You guys are doing great. That is well above industry standard. So happy to hear that. Top performers right there. But what I maybe didn't know was that they're only getting 2 tours per week, and they really need 10 in order to hit their occupancy goals. So if they're only getting 2 tours a week and they're closing at 50%, that's 1 rental a week, and that's not enough to move their numbers. Another metric, I hear this a lot right now because the markets are doing so well, but we're 99.9% occupied. Okay, great. That sounds like you're full and doing well. But financially, the property is only 90% occupied because we gave away too many concessions or specials to get to that 99.9%. So they're really only 90% occupied economically. Here's another one. 10,000 impressions per month. Oh my goodness, our ads are doing so well. We're getting 10,000 impressions. But what we don't know is out of 10,000 people who saw the ad, we only had 100 people click to the website, which is a 1% conversion rate. And that's not great. So I just want to put this into perspective. And now I'll start to introduce you to the concept of buddy metrics. So buddy metrics are just related data points that we want to look at together to better tell that whole story. This is your checks and your balances. So if you tell me you have a 50% closing ratio, instead of taking that at face value, I'm going to start asking you some additional questions about other metrics to see what the full story is there. So here's a good example here at RealLink that I use. I can give you a lot of data about what your prospects are maybe doing with videos. I can tell you how many videos your team created. I can tell you how many prospects were engaged. But the really important data point is how many tours and rentals and renewals are those videos influencing. So see how those buddy metrics go together. So for this, I don't want to just use my data set, but I want to pair it with your data set so that we can buddy up with clients and tell the full story by pairing that data together. And I will give you a hint that with any tools, you don't necessarily always need a full integration with your software to be able to do this. So what 2 data points can you tie together better now that you know? Let me show you a couple of examples. Oh, sorry, I keep advancing too quickly. So here are examples of buddy metrics. So you want to look at website clicks with click-through rates. You can look at your closing ratios, also with your cancellation rate. So you don't want a, if your team is closing really high, but then you're getting a lot of cancellations, something's probably off there. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your leasing team isn't doing a great job. It might mean that your price is too low, or you're just not driving quality traffic to your leasing team. So again, it gives you something further to investigate, which is exactly what we want to do to be able to make better decisions. You can look at your leads plus your cost per lead plus your lead conversion rates. Those all 3 go together. And then the other example I showed was physical occupancy versus economic occupancy. So how do you tell a better story? I want to encourage you all to start looking at this in the way that you would tell any other story. If you're writing a book, you probably maybe even learned this in elementary or middle school as you were taking language arts classes. But every story has a couple of different elements to it. There's a character, that is your department or the person or the team that you're reporting on. It has a setting. This is what you're measuring in the place where you are tracking or measuring the data. So what are you measuring? Are you measuring traffic or rentals or digital or online marketing tools? And where are you measuring this? Is this in your property management software system? Is this in Google Analytics? Is it in another dashboard? And what is the plot? So the plot, when you're talking about a data story, that's the context, the time frame. This is the buddy metrics, the why you're measuring what you're measuring, and it's the tours and the low. The tours are low, but maybe you spend a lot on advertising. I want to make sure that we talk about that too. What's the data necessarily telling you? And then for resolution, the decisions that you make from the data. How you resolve the conflict or the problem. Is it a high ad budget but low traffic? So you need to convert better mid-funnel, or don't want to spend more on advertising, or do you need to change your advertising sources? But these are the elements of a story, of any story. So character, setting, plot, the conflict that's what the data is telling you, and what do you need to do about it? And then how you're going to resolve that. So think about it in that frame of mind. If you are trying to tell a story to your boss to try to get approval for other marketing tools or strategies that you want to implement, try walking through this exercise and backing your data up into the storytelling element. Data will accomplish nothing if it doesn't inspire change. So with that, I want to introduce you to some of who I think are the industry's best storytellers. Mike Brewer. Mike is the Chief Operating Officer at Radco Residential, and he has the C-suite vantage point. But what he does is he gives bite-sized, under 2-minute videos about data. And he tells it in the most beautiful 2-minute story that is so compelling that you'll never be able to hit pause on that video. You want to watch it to the very end. And I want to encourage you to connect with all of these people over on social media, because this is where they're telling their stories. But Mike has that COO, C-suite perspective. Melissa Lafort she offers the training perspective. So she is with Windsor Communities, but she is telling her story to leasing teams across the portfolio because she is the trainer. So she's helping them understand why they need to be doing things a certain way. She's physically leading by example and actually shows them the way. She doesn't tell them how to do it, but she's physically showing it. And she shares that data out on her social channels. Stephanie Gonzalez is with Ventura Realty, and she has a marketing perspective. She is so savvy at dabbling in non-multifamily tech, and she certainly pushes the limits when it comes to questioning the way that we do things in the industry. So I think that you'll enjoy her story. And then Brittany Farber has a really just wonderful, energetic on-site perspective. So she is a manager, an outreach manager for a property. She's based out in Denver, but she shares socially both for prospects and residents and business partners. But she's got that on-site perspective, and she is using all of the data and everything happening at their property to go and tell this story out to the masses to a couple of different audiences, and it makes sense for all of them. So use her as a great example of how to tell the story of your community. And then now we'll move into Q&A. So happy to see if we have any questions in the chat. Let me pull that up here. Did we have any questions, Ash? You've probably been fielding those. Oh, I saw one that is asking, what is the industry benchmark for SEO and PPC or Google Ads? That is a trick question, actually. Unfortunately, this is what people always want a benchmark for, because it's one of the hardest things to measure against your competitors or against the masses. So there is not a good benchmark for SEO and paid ads because there are so many variables. Those numbers can be very different depending on the market that you're in, how many comps are in your market, and depending on what you're spending, especially when it comes to Google ads or paid ads, that can really vary. So what I recommend that you do is again, be benchmarking your own data. And one thing that you can do is you can ask whoever your supplier partners are, and they're managing, you know, multiple ad accounts, or they're managing websites for multiple multifamily clients. They can probably aggregate their data and tell you what they're seeing the averages are across clients that they're working with. And so that's somewhat of a benchmark. It's not necessarily a national, all-encompassing across multifamily industry kind of a benchmark, but that's probably the best place to start. But it is really, really hard to benchmark both SEO and PPC for those reasons. That's a great question though. And then also, what is the best way to use or share video to social networks? I love this one because I love to share video on social, and I will say social channels prefer native video content. And what I mean by that is that you're not sharing a link to a video that lives somewhere else, but they want the actual video to be posted to those networks. So let's take Facebook, for example. Let's say you have a really great unit video of your property and you have it on your property's YouTube channel. You could go to Facebook and you could post a link to that video that's on YouTube. So you're going to post a YouTube link, but Facebook will not rank that as high as if you have shared the actual video of that unit just directly into Facebook or LinkedIn, or you can really substitute a lot of these social channels. A lot of them work and operate the same way. So it's always better to use those native videos on your social networks whenever you can. I will say with our product, you can download your videos and share those out to those networks. You can share directly from our app, but if you want to level up the social media game, you can share natively too if you want to, and that is the best way to do it. We had one more that I see, and Ashley, unless you see any others that I didn't catch, one more is, how much should on-site teams know about SEO, PPC, Google Analytics, and all of these metrics? I think they should know a lot more than what we let them in on. They are incredibly savvy people. They tend to also a lot of times be of a younger generation who is already tech savvy and marketing savvy. So I don't know that we want to overwhelm them with getting deep into Google Analytics per se. But like I mentioned earlier, when they know enough about how these strategies work and how Google ads can be more effective, they're going to absolutely facilitate better performance of those things, just knowing that, because they can influence it. And again, they can feed information up the chain to whoever's managing those. And, you know, we talked about rich snippets. We talked a lot about video content too, and how it helps with these metrics and measuring these things that are really important. So those on-site teams a lot of times are who actually can and should be creating the content that we need to strengthen those campaigns. So I do think it's really important for them to have just a very basic knowledge of SEO, PPC, and Google Analytics, or things that come along with that digital marketing suite. That was a great question too. Anybody else have questions? Did I miss anything, Ashley?
No, that is it, as we're coming up on time.
Okay, perfect. So thank you guys. I know we went really quickly today, but again, I encourage you to snap and share over on LinkedIn. We'll be picking a winner from anyone who shares content from today's webinar. And then I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. If we're not connected already, shoot a request over. If we are, feel free to reach out, message me if you would love to talk through your funnel, your particular scenarios. I'm happy to just give you sort of that third-party diagnosis and see if we can help you level up your marketing game. So thanks for joining today. I appreciate you guys, and hopefully you've got some good takeaways to share and to create a 2022 marketing plan that is stronger than ever. Take care.